call tonight's meeting to order for the Norfolk School Committee for Thursday, January 13th. First time at 7:03 p.m. And as we start out every meeting, read the mission statement, which is Norfolk Public Schools offers a safe, joyful, and challenging learning environment that meets the needs of our diverse students. Through school, family, and community partnerships, we provide an education that inspires lifelong learners and cultivates caring and productive citizens of our ever-changing world. Roll call, please.
Sarah Ward.
Shannon Meneses.
Jennifer Wynn.
Medora Champagne.
Thomas Doyle.
Victoria Saldana.
Ingrid O'Lardy.
Ingrid joining us remotely, just to be clear with that. All right, so actually nothing on the agenda for me this evening, so immediately to Dr. Lardy.
Sounds good. First on the agenda for tonight, we have our district business consultant, Barry Nectow, here, and he is going to provide this committee with an update on the quarterly budget status. So I'll turn it over to Barry.
Sounds good.
Thank you. Nice to see everybody.
See you,
So
Barry.
this is the second quarter budget update, which is December 31st, so 6 months of activity. On the first page, the pie chart. That's just a pie chart depicting our entire budget broken down by the main areas of the budget. As you know, the budget's $13,751,000. I started looking at some numbers earlier in the week. The number that I always focused on as a business manager is sort of what I consider the fixed costs, which are really salaries, tuition, although tuition can go up and down, transportation and utilities, and that's about 93% of our budget. Thanks. Salaries end up being about 87% of our budget. There's no surprise there. If you flip to the next page, each department has a page on the in the packet. We're running on the administration side right about budget, and again, this takes actual numbers through 12/31 and then projects out the remaining 6 months of the year. And each page is set up the same. So no surprises really in the administration section of the budget. Right, we're running right around right at budget. The next page is the instructional services, so that's where the heart of our budget is, and it's all of our teaching and learning expenses. And we're a little bit ahead of budget by about $4,700. This includes all of our long-term subs, takes into account leaves of absence, and it also includes our aides. And the aides is an area that we're really keeping our eye on because we've had an uptick in students with special needs, and oftentimes that brings upon the need for additional aides, which we have had. But again, this number includes everything we know today, and it's about at budget, which I feel pretty good about. So we'll keep a very close eye on it for the next few months until it sort of stabilizes sort of during the last part of the year. Over on the next page is where you will see a little bit of a budget deficit, meaning we've spent more than the budget. And it's really comprised of two different line items, both in transportation. It's our special needs transportation because we've had some additional students go out of district. And then also a little bit of additional expense to our bus vendor for COVID cleaning. So we're about $53,000 over here. That will come down as there's activity in the out-of-district students, and sometimes they'll leave school early, or sometimes we've split a transportation expense with another district, and it may not be fully reflected here. But it is a line item that we'll be keeping a very close eye on for the remainder of the year. Nothing really to report in operations and maintenance. We're right at budget. Same with fixed charges, not too much of a story there. Equipment is blank. And then the last page is our tuition page. So this reflects everything we knew through 12/31, and we're right at budget. What it doesn't include is some activity that's occurred since 12/31 So this line item is actually a little bit behind or above budget. So we've had some additional students go out of district that we hadn't planned for. I believe most of them are as a result of move-ins. And we'll have to keep a very careful eye on this particular group of line items. The good news is we have this Special Education Stabilization Fund to fall back on should we need to for transportation and tuition, and that isn't reflected using any of it here.
Good.
So as we roll further into the year and the budget continues to move around some, we may have to access it, but we really won't make that decision until much later in the year, towards the end of the year. Next page is a summary of everything I just discussed previously and shows that we're a little bit ahead of the budget by $53,351. Next page is just a summary of our special revenue accounts, principally our federal and state grants, as well as our revolving funds. We do have quite a bit of one-time grant money in our grant funds this year, principally addressing COVID needs. Some of that will roll off the end of this year, and we do project we're going to roll a little bit forward in one of the ESSER grants. Just a small amount available for a little bit of additional funds in 23. And then last page is really just a summary of where we are in the gift fund as of 12/31. We have about 42,000 in there, and as you know, we principally use it for teacher enhancements to their instruction programs, a little bit of technology, the Camp Borndale scholarships, and then special events around Field Day. But haven't used much of that to date. And then the very last page is just a summary of all the financial data that was in slides previously, just at a little bit different look, more of a summarized financial look. It ends up at the same place as the previous numbers. And as I said, we're in relatively kind of a predictable spot this time of year. Lots of activity ahead, but overall, I think we're in good shape. I'm happy to answer any questions anybody might have.
I have two questions. Barry and Ingrid.
Oh,
Is she trying to talk?
I couldn't tell.
No.
I'm sorry,
Okay.
I couldn't tell who was speaking.
I know, like, under AIDS, pre-K, and special education not budgeted long-term substitutes, I'm curious, are these current positions that have not yet been filled, or are they potentially like, we really need to get some extra hands in here because it's a need?
But Jen, most of those positions have been filled. They're unbudgeted positions because we've seen significant growth in our specialized programs related to new families and new students moving into the district. And we have, as a result, in order to honor and implement IEPs that we are receiving, we have had to add some additional staff. We do have one current position that's advertised and hasn't been filled, which is included and reflected in these numbers.
And my second question is, with the special education transportation, is that something, I'm curious, is that something that gets covered under circuit breaker money, or does that, are we at, no, yes, no? Would that help?
Take that, Ingrid.
Or is that?
You can respond, Barry, that's fine.
Sure. Interesting question. Circuit breaker, up until a couple of years ago, did not cover special needs transportation.
Yeah.
Last year was the first year that it did. It's a very small reimbursement rate, but you get something which we never got up until I think it might have been 21, might have been the first year.
I'm curious, what is the circuit breaker number right now? Like, what is the minimum that, right? Because isn't it a minimum that a special ed student has to meet, like,
Yes.
what you're spending, like 50,000, like, what, I'm
Yep.
curious.
So it's about 48 to 50,000.
That's right,
It's in
okay.
that range. So
Okay,
once
so-
you clear that,
Yes, then
then
you
you
get.
start to get a percentage
Yes.
of the
Yeah,
reimbursement.
all right, that hasn't changed.
It's usually in the mid to low 70s, so 72-ish, 73. I don't know what it is.
So we
off the top.
essentially have like a $50,000 deductible, and then after that, we
That's the way to look at it.
Yeah, okay,
It's a
well, that
little
hasn't
bit-
changed. long
Yeah, it's a
time.
little bit different than that. So the circuit breaker we file annually. It's a claim, and again, you are reimbursed for a portion of the costs of students that whose basic educational program exceeds a threshold number in terms of cost to the district. And that is a reimbursement program, and then we have the funds from circuit breaker that we can apply to costs in the following year. The transportation costs, as Barry indicated, we have picked up some new students that we are required to transport, so that is driving our special education transportation up. In addition, the cost for a monitor on a specialized bus has increased from $72, which it was last year, to $90 per hour, which is driving a significant increase in that cost as well. And then about $12,000 of that is the cost that we have, in addition to our current transportation contract for general ed students with homes, to have the buses cleaned and disinfected daily. Our goal right now, as again Barry said, we're only 6 months into the school year. There may be other savings that we realize between now and March, whether that's in special education or in the salary line and our substitute line, that might help us offset some of the deficits we're seeing in the special education account right now. Should we not be able to absorb some of those costs and we still are in a position where at a deficit in the budget, then we would have to, in order to access funds from the stabilization account, come back to the Norfolk School Committee with a request. You would have to vote on it, and then we also have to go to the select board, and they would have to vote to appropriate or allow us to use funds from the stabilization to balance the budget for this fiscal year.
Thank you.
Sure. Any other questions for Barry on the budget?
Sounds like a talk show. Barry on the budget.
You're quite welcome.
Budget hour with Barry.
Thanks, Barry.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Next on the agenda, I wanted to provide the school committee with an update on our district status as far as COVID-19. As everybody is, I'm sure, painfully aware, there has been a significant surge in cases, not just at the state level, but across the country, particularly with the Omicron variant. As you know, the Omicron variant is significantly more contagious than prior strains of COVID-19, although currently it appears that it is producing more mild illness, particularly in people who are fully vaccinated. That said, prior to the December break, for our case count totals at the Freeman Kennedy, we had a total of 23 cases between August 22nd and December 22nd. Over the past 2 weeks, or the 2 weeks of the December break, we had an additional 26 cases reported at Freeman Kennedy. At H. Olive Day, we had 29 cases from the start of the year through December 22nd, and an additional 34 cases reported over the break. This past week, we just reported our new numbers for the past 7 days. We have an additional 20 cases at H. Olive Day and another 19 at Freeman. So clearly we are seeing, like all other schools and districts across the Commonwealth, an increase in cases. However, I think it's important to know that we are continuing to diligently enforce our safety protocols. So all of our students and staff continue to wear masks. As I announced in Wednesday's words, the commissioner just extended the mask mandate through February 28th. So all of our students and staff wear masks at all times in school, with the exception of while they're eating. In the cafeteria, students are socially distanced. We discussed that earlier in the year. We chose to maintain social distancing during the lunch periods. And students remove their masks to eat, but are encouraged by our lunch supervisors and monitors to mask as soon as they've completed their meal and have thrown away their food. So they are maintaining masking as much as possible in those common areas, with the exception of directly while they're eating. Our HVAC filters at both schools are continuing to be regularly replaced. We have been bringing in as much outside air as possible to increase the ventilation in the building. Obviously, when we have temperatures like we did the other day, and like we're heading into Friday and Saturday, when it's really, really cold, we have to limit the amount of external air that we're bringing in order to not override our heating systems. We do have HEPA filter units in all of the classrooms and instructional spaces that run during the day. We're continuing to operate our test and stay program. So through the test and stay program, we have the capacity to test anybody who presents as symptomatic during the school day and immediately identify whether or not the person is potentially COVID positive, so we can begin immediate contact tracing. We also are able to test anybody who is identified as a close contact of somebody who was COVID positive through the schools. We have seen up till now almost no evidence of transmission from COVID positive individuals to close contacts through school. Recognizing that Omicron is very different than what we've been dealing with, I can't guarantee that that's going to continue, but we are doing everything possible to mitigate the potential spread at school. Again, we continue to follow our regular cleaning and disinfecting protocols that you would approved during the summer. And we were able, through the Department of Education, to order and supply all staff members with COVID-19 rapid antigen tests when they returned from the December break, as well as to issue to each staff member 6 weeks worth of KN95 masks. We have an order in that Matt has worked with us on for an additional 400 rapid antigen tests for staff. Not surprisingly, given the announcement from the federal government that tests are going to be reallocated and distributed to schools, our order has been held up and has been delayed multiple days. Hopefully we will get that in shortly. Again, the CDC and the Mass Department of Education have updated some of their COVID isolation and quarantine protocols. They have shortened the period of isolation for COVID positive individuals from 10 to 5 days. If people remain completely asymptomatic and fever-free, they are able to return to school on day 6, as long as they demonstrate significant improvement in symptoms. The quarantine periods for close contacts were also reduced, and I did share out with parents through Wednesday's Words a summary of all of the COVID-19 protocol changes. We do receive weekly or bi-weekly reports from the Department of Public Health. At this time, 75% of the children in Norfolk have had at least their first dose of the COVID-19 vaccine, and that number continues to grow. And the only other thing I would share is that for parents and for information purposes, we do have a COVID-19 dashboard where we report weekly all of the cases that we have been made aware of, either through school or through parents reporting positive cases. They are updated weekly and posted to our district dashboard. And you can also see the case reports for the Norfolk community and the trends over time on that. Happy to take any questions you might have on the COVID-19 protocols. No, a lot of questions.
That was exhaustive. Thank you. Thank you.
That's a lot of information, but all right, then I will jump on and talk about our equity committee. As you know, we hired a regional director of equity, diversity, and inclusion through a regional shared grant. I'm happy to announce that we were notified today that we received grant funding for a second year and that will fund the director of wellness position, Dot Pearl, who has come to present to the committee, as well as our regional director of diversity, equity, and inclusion. It'll also potentially fund a behavior specialist to be shared among the regions to support training and onboarding of new staff, as well as some intervention services. This year, one of our goals is to conduct an equity audit to better understand how we are doing in terms of meeting our district goals of creating a safe and inclusive learning environment. It's important to us that all of our students feel welcomed at school, feel a sense of belonging, and feel that they can see themselves reflected in our curriculum and in our instructional materials. As part of this process, the first thing the Equity Committee did, I worked with Mrs. Peppel, as well as our committee, which is comprised of teachers, administrators, technology staff, mental health staff members, and our curriculum director, Vicki, who is seated with you tonight, and myself. And what we did was to try to articulate a clear vision for where we want to see the district in terms of equity and what it means to us to have a fully integrated, fully safe, inclusive, equitable school system. We use the Harvard RIDES model, which is Reimagining Integration, Diverse and Equitable Schools project. And attached to the memo that I sent you, you see our first draft of a vision statement for equity. There are four primary categories. The first being academics. We want to make sure that we are providing a rigorous, strong academic foundation for all students, allowing them to capitalize and connect to people of different backgrounds and across all lines of difference. The second category is around belonging, and again, that comes back to the culture and climate of the school, that students feel welcome, they feel safe, and that they are able to interact and celebrate their own culture and heritage, as well as respect that of their diverse classmates. The third category is for staff to understand the role of unconscious bias and be able to make sure that in their instruction and materials, they're respectful and culturally responsive to students. And for students to be able to identify and recognize when people are being treated unfairly and to be able to advocate. And the last is to develop an appreciation for different perspectives, thoughts, and people, and to have collaborative working relationships among students and staff across all lines of difference and background. So this isn't just about racial equity, this is about equity in terms of gender, in terms of religious beliefs, in terms of differently abled students, and making sure that the public schools in Norfolk are open and welcoming and respectful of all. In order to gauge our progress towards meeting that mission, we identified different sources of data that we want to look at and analyze. The first being demographic data, second, achievement data. We do want to look at our hiring and recruiting practices, our school environment and climate, as well as our curriculum. The first thing that we are going to be doing, the Equity Committee has been working at looking at different surveys that have been published to look at family perspectives of school climate. And we will be sending out a family survey next Wednesday that will look at how families and how children are experiencing the schools from the perspective of the home. So that survey will be going out. We will also be doing a staff survey. As we're gathering this data, we will keep the committee apprised of the trends and findings that we're seeing, and the final report will come to the school committee later this spring. Again, happy to answer any questions about the progress of the Equity Committee. Not a lot of questions tonight. Okay, so you should see that survey going out on Wednesday. Again, we used Panorama Education in partnership with the Harvard Graduate School of Education had published a survey, as well as a survey that was developed by the Ontario government for public schools. So they're well-tested, embedded surveys, and we look forward to the data that we get back. All right, last for me tonight is the curriculum review cycle. So districts in general all have a curriculum review cycle, and the goal of the review cycle is to, in a scheduled and structured way, make sure that we are reviewing and analyzing every core content area, our instructional materials and curriculum resources, as well as our pedagogy, at least once every 5 years. That helps us to make sure that our materials are current, that we are using the best practices available to provide content to students, and again, making changes as they're needed. Sometimes there's changes to state frameworks and we have to realign our curriculum. So the curriculum review cycle is a long-term plan for looking at different content areas. It's a collaborative process that teachers are actively involved in. And we're looking at current research, we're looking at student achievement data, we're looking at best instructional practice, and reflecting on our own professional experiences and expertise to make recommendations that we usually bring to the school committee. It's usually a 3-phase process. In the first phase, we do the evaluation of the program. We identify any learning gaps or any program needs. In the second phase, we revise our curriculum accordingly to the recommendations that are brought forward by the committee, incorporate any new resources or materials, rewrite the curriculum, and in the third phase, we implement the changes district-wide. Shockingly, when I first started, we prepared a 10-year curriculum review cycle, which looked out to 2021, which seemed really far away at the time. But we have now completed the first 10-year cycle, and I am proposing a new 10-year curriculum review cycle. We have had some recent concerns about our ELA curriculum, particularly at the Freeman Kennedy and the upper grades. And so we have switched the plan around a little bit, and we would like to bring forward and start with a review of our English language arts curriculum. Hopefully we can launch that later this spring and summer and carry that into next year. 23-24, we would be looking at our math program. The following year, art, music, and wellness. 25-26, science and technology. 26-27, we're looking at our bullying curriculum and our SEL, social emotional learning curriculum. 27-28 will be social studies again. As you probably recall, we just completed the social studies curriculum review last year. And then the cycle will begin again in 28 with ELA, followed by math, followed by art, music, and wellness. Again, this is just a long-term plan. It helps for budget purposes. It also helps, again, to make sure that we are in a scheduled way, constantly reviewing, updating, and revising our curriculum. But should there be new changes at the state level to any particular content area, or should a new need emerge, it's always subject to change. Happy to take any questions on the new proposed curriculum cycle, and this one I need a vote from the committee to adopt.
I have a quick question. This does seem like obviously a large undertaking. For each of the phases, I see the timeline below, but for each phase, roughly how long does each of those take?
So it depends on the content area. Our major content areas, like ELA and math, the evaluation phase can be a full year. The writing and revising takes place in the second year and a full implementation in the third. If we're doing a brand new program adoption, we might spend a year evaluating a content area like math. If we decide we're going to adopt a new program, we may be implementing the program the following year and then writing and revising the curriculum based on those new resources simultaneously. Other reviews, like the social emotional learning program review, because it's a smaller portion of the content, might take 6 months in the evaluation phase, less for the writing and revising, and then implemented right away. Art, music, and social studies, again, those art, music, and science also can be a 6 to 8 month evaluation phase.
Great, thank you.
Sure. Any other questions?
Seeing none, so we need a motion to accept the curriculum review cycle as presented.
I move to accept the curriculum review cycle as presented.
Second.
Second?
Further comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Great. All right. I think we're on to committee reports, Thomas. That's all I have for tonight.
Sarah, you're up.
Okay, some reorganization news. Lisa Whitkiss is retiring in March. She is our admin. And our chair, Samad Khan, stepped down as of Monday. He is moving. So Trevor Knott will be chair and Bruce Cates will be vice chair going forward, starting at our next meeting. I don't know if you remember, I was talking about the early college courses that we were writing a grant for. That is due this week, so Dr. Gilson will be finishing that up and submitting it. Independent of the grant, actually, there's some exciting stuff going on. Middlesex College has accepted 9 KP teachers as adjunct faculty. So hopefully in the fall, there will be 5 classes available, and they'll be taught at KP during the day for college credit. And there'll be an estimated cost of $300 or $400 per student, which is pretty good for a college credit, I think. But more to come on that. There'll be some info sessions for students and their parents this spring. We're going to be getting a presentation at the next school committee meeting. KP is also working with a company called American Safety Inc. They do EMS, paramedic, ambulance, CNA, phlebotomist, all that sort of stuff, that type of training. So students will be able to take courses in that and leave with being certified, as well as probably a job offer. So if they don't want to go the traditional college route, they leave high school with a job, which is pretty awesome. Those certificates also come with college credits, which they can use further down the road if they want to get college education in one of their fields. Those credits will transfer. We also reviewed and passed the 2021-2022 superintendent goals, and we went over the superintendent evaluation process for the new school committee members. And that was it.
Thank you.
Yes, that we are bringing forth a first reading of a revised policy, animals in the school. And I think, Ingrid, correct me if I'm wrong, but the big change to this is adding more language in around specifically when and where animals can be brought on school grounds. So during school hours, not allowing them on the loop area, the front walkway area, anything around the perimeter of the school grounds is under Norfolk Recreation, and you follow their bylaws. And I think it's really basically just about school hours, during school hours, where animals are allowed. Of course, if there's an education program or something,
They're allowed.
the dog, Mitch the dog, that's a little bit different.
He can go anywhere.
He's allowed to go anywhere.
When the committee looked at this policy, we were originally asked to look at it by the animal control officer in Norfolk. And when we brought it up, we saw that the Mass Association for School Committees had actually revised this policy in totality, and was their new proposed policies was much more explicit about specific types of animals that are not ever allowed in schools due to the growing concerns around rabies. And so this talks about wild animals, bats, poisonous animals. So it's a little bit more explicit in that, as well as clearly defines that guide, hearing, and other service dogs or law enforcement dogs are allowed to be in school under the auspices of their trainer or under the direction of their trainer. And it clearly defines what a service animal, what constitutes a service animal. As Jen said, we also made clear, our policy has always been that we do not permit animals on the school playground areas where the playground equipment is, primarily because of the surfacing there. It's very hard to clean up after animals. So that this policy specifically states that animals are not allowed on school playgrounds or the playfields that are immediately adjacent to the playground. And again, fine to have animals in the parking lot, the walkway, or the trail that's leading up to the Freeman Kennedy. We've just asked that we don't have animals on the front entrance sidewalks during the school day where kids are walking through back and forth. Again, we don't control the fields. The rec department controls the baseball fields surrounding the school. The only grounds that we have are the walkways and the school playground and play fields. Happy to take any questions, but this is, again, just a first reading.
Sorry, I was reading it all, just it's interesting to read there. So you can't have a poisonous snake, sure, I'm not warned, that's a good idea.
I'm having trouble hearing you, Thomas.
Oh, sorry.
Your microphone's pointed away from you. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm looking at this, and so you can't have a poisonous snake, so that makes sense, but theoretically, you could bring a python or a boa constrictor in, because the way they kind of parse this out.
Yeah, I think this is really about animals that in classrooms as classroom pets.
Or like they do rec programs on school property.
Well, so there are snake
sometimes.
things that will
They
have
brought a
that.
kangaroo once, like there's. What? Oh, yeah.
Well, marsupials are allowed for this.
But they're a fur-bearing animal.
Yeah, they're a fur-bearing animal. Thank you.
Yeah, but they're a cool fur.
But it has an educational purpose, but even.
No, but you can see someone bringing a python in.
Program exception for that.
But not if it's poisonous. I understand where we're,
Yeah, I'm not
Saying all snakes in general.
and never a.
It would, yeah, it would seem like all snakes would seem to make more sense, but so be it.
Killer snakes.
Those that will, wouldn't all
To
snakes
harm
be killer
and
snakes? Snakes are carnivorous.
Tree snake doesn't do anything.
What do you
Garter
think a
snake?
snake
Are we
eats?
really arguing about
It's silly.
Is that what's really going down?
I think we're going down a philosophical bend that we can skip, but anyway, thank you.
You're
Is that
married
it?
to a lawyer.
Yes, sorry, I'm being difficult. All right, that's all for policy, Jen?
Yes.
Thank you. All right, so let's see, we need to, okay, so next up, I don't see it listed, on it, but we need to, oh, I'm sorry, I crossed that already. The school minutes, approve those. We need a motion to accept those from our December 15th meeting.
I move to accept the December 15th school committee meeting minutes.
Do we have a second?
Second?
Any further discussion on that? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
And then finally, it looks like next scheduled meeting would be Tuesday, February 8th. Any conflicts with that proposed date?
Yeah, we had talked about potentially having one more Wednesday night meeting because it would be the last budget meeting before the public hearing. I don't know, Barry, if Wednesday's better for you that week or if that would work for the committee, and then resuming our regular Tuesday meetings after that time.
think I have plans February 9th.
8, I thought she said,
I thought you said Wednesday, the 9th.
Well, that's the other possibility. I guess it's listed as the 8th, but the 9th is another
It is listed as
possibility.
the 8th.
Yeah.
That's our traditional meeting.
let me,
Wednesday-
I left
Wednesday
my
would be
phone in the
great for
car.
me, but I can make Tuesday work as well, whichever works obviously for you.
that, I could do either day. That week.
I think I
would
can do
appear.
either day, too.
I'm good. Sarah, you good?
You think the library will be open by then?
Fingers crossed, right?
So Jen, would your preference be Tuesday then, if you have something on Wednesday?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah.
And so you can do Tuesday the 8th
Yep,
then,
I can
Barry?
make Tuesday work. Yep.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Barry. I just
problem.
made the commitment the other
It's
night.
budget with Barry.
It's a big one, so.
Are we changing your name to
Budget with Barry, that's his official name going forward. so. All
Name?
right,
The
so
comforting
next meeting will be Tuesday, February 8th. Just wait, we'll confirm this in 1 second.
Miss Wynn has a,
I just have to see if I'm carpooling that day. I'm so sorry.
How exciting is your social calendar?
It is very busy. It is very busy.
We're all like, we got nothing
It's
going
like,
on.
I have nothing.
Oh, dang it. All right. I'll switch it to Wednesday. That's fine. I can't do Tuesday. I have to carpool.
All right, we're back on Wednesday.
Back to Wednesday.
So now we're back to Wednesday the 9th.
Well,
That works.
unless we switch policy.
That's fine, Jen. We could do policy before on Wednesday the 9th.
I'm just gonna,
Okay.
wait, are we on
so
Wednesday
sorry.
now?
show up.
We're going to do Tuesday. We're going to do Tuesday, but we'll switch policy. Or after. I can't do policy at Tuesday the 8th.
Why don't we just meet on Wednesday then?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's do Wednesday.
Okay.
Yeah, because
Everybody
otherwise
else
it's a
can
whole
do it.
separate meeting.
Barry
yeah.
would prefer it, right? So you know, you can
prefer
just,
it,
you can
okay.
say you're welcome, Barry.
Budget with Barry.
Welcome, Budget with Barry.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so it helps
All right,
that
so
budget
now
with
we're
Barry, and
Wednesday the
then
9th for both policy.
Wednesday the 9th, policy and regular meeting.
Yes.
We're all agreed on that.
Awesome.
Okay, fantastic. All right, so then finally, we just need a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting.
So moved.
We need a second.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you very much.
Lisa, Mike.
I'm putting
Calendar.
it calendar now.
I wish you all some.
Aesthetics.
Over 20 years, the vinyl siding will fade, it buckles, I mean, maybe it doesn't buckle.